Oh, it chimes down. Well, welcome. I am so excited today to have Stephanie Liu join us, live streamer extraordinaire. Thanks, Stephanie, for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Well, we connected years ago. Stephanie was the person that I listened to way back when, and I uh, started using ECAM Live, which is what we're going to be talking today about, a little bit about live streaming. But they actually started years ago. But now it's more important than ever for all of us to really kind of get to know virtual and really kind of see where this trend is going. So, yes, I remember you had talked about it years ago, and I signed up for it, and I never used it. So begins my journey now.
Well, I mean, it's a good thing that you had signed up back then because it was a one-time fee, right? You didn't have to worry about anything. You get grandfathered in, and now it's subscription based. So everyone that was just kind of like sitting on their hands, now they're realizing, oh, I should have got in when I should have got in. And I feel like that's the trend with things, right? It's if you're an early adopter, you got in and you got to like sweep the leg on the competition.
It's so great. Well, we can talk about that. And for those of you who are listening who don't know what Ecamm Live is, it's just one of the platforms that you can use for live streaming. So I used to work in TV news, and it's basically like building your own home studio and the software behind that. And that's for Mac only. There's other we're not doing a commercial. This is just talking about the capabilities, but there's other programs that you can use if you have a Mac. But today, let's talk about, I really want to hear more about your story. And we're also going to talk about the future of live streaming and what people can really do as a speaker, as a thought leader, as corporate executives to really up their game now that we really need to start thinking about how are we going to connect virtually. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about today.
I'm excited about it. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
So how have things been for you? I know that you, like you said, you started on this journey way before, and now everyone's trying to play catch up. So is it business as usual for you?
Oh, it's booming as far as business goes. My phone, my DMs, direct messages, people are just reaching out and saying, "I've seen you. Now I want to do what you do." And so it's good from a live streamer perspective. The downside is that since so many people are hopping onto Zoom and trying to do the live streaming, the best gear that you could have used is now like off limits. It's really hard to get your hands on it, which is kind of crazy.
Yes. Oh, I know, because things are sold out now. I know that was kind of one of the rush. I have a lot of tools we were talking about before. So those of you who have been listening, you know that I've been building my virtual studio. I've always had the camera and the lights, but now it's different kind of up leveling. And you guys don't have to worry about that if you're focused on just going live. But as a speaker, how can I create that experience, right? So I've been referring a lot of people to different things, but we do have to be on the lookout that you have to order your gear early because yes, everyone needed that webcam that I recommended everyone get, all my executive and all my clients. I was like, get the webcam. This is years ago. And now just to up it a little bit. So let's
Yeah.
start. How did it all begin for you? How did you start exploring live streaming before people were really talking about it?
Oh, absolutely. So I come from an ad agency background, right? It's like about a decade and a half, just like deep in the trenches of agency life. And I loved it and I enjoyed it. That's where I met my husband. We're both agency folks. And then we found out that, oh, we're pregnant. And so I
Mm,
decided, man, if I'm going to bring another human being into this world, I can't work 50 to 60 plus hours a
mm.
week. And so I decided to go off on my own. And that in and of itself, it's like, you got to have the courage, right? And what was interesting, Angela, was that everyone was calling themselves a digital marketing strategist. And you have
Mm.
to realize, okay, well, how am I going to stand out from the sea of sameness? How do I make myself top of mind and tip of tongue so that way my old agency clients will come back to me, refer new clients, and so on? And that's when I decided, okay, 2016, live streaming is coming out on Facebook. What can I do that's different? And by different, I meant not just, talking to the camera on my smartphone, but how do I make it look so professional that it also gives off that presence of, I want to work with her because she has a process, she has a framework, and man, it looks good, right?
Yes. And look how good she looks. For those of you who are listening, we'll also stream this on YouTube. Her setup looks amazing.
Yours is amazing too. I was like, man, Angela, I want I want that couch. I want that.
They're going to have to pop over to YouTube to just to get a sneak peek. But and like I said, I'm up leveling as well. This is the time where no matter where you start, if you're on your phone, maybe you go to the webcam. If you're on the webcam, maybe you move up to a DSLR camera. And you can start where you are, but there's always levels to go to depending on what your purpose is. Right. If you're just doing
Exactly.
meetings versus if you're a keynote speaker, how are we going to stand out in the sea of sameness? Like you said,
Mhm.
you really have to have your gear and your look and your brand up there. So I love that you started that journey, is that you knew early on, like the power of the only. How am I going to be the only one? So talk about that evolution. How did it evolve?
Well, it evolved in the sense that I would keep sharing what I did as a digital marketing strategist. I knew that other people would tell people what they do, but with live video, you can show people what you do.
Yes.
And the interesting thing about it is that most people, they look at the vanity metrics, how many likes, how many comments, how many shares. But here's the thing, there are some people, we call them the non-actives. They're watching, but they might not actually leave a comment
Mm,
until they actually need your help. And they'll say to you like, hey, I've been watching your video for quite some time now, and I would love your help. And that's exactly what happened with Chef Claudia Sandoval. She won MasterChef season 6. And she had
yes.
reached out, Angela, and she said, hey, you know what? T-Mobile wants me to do my first Facebook Live ever. Can you help me with that strategy? And I was like, well, back then I only had an iPhone 6, a ring light, not that much. But when you have a strategy in place, oh, it's amazing. It opens up so many doors. And within that time frame, first live stream, 178,000 downloads of her book within 24 hours. That was like mind boggling. Like, whoa.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was like, wow, Claudia, this is amazing. And T-Mobile had, they had tried, like, we've never seen this type of engagement on anything that we've ever done with any other, celebrity or guest on the T-Mobile Tuesdays app. So that was a big, huge win. That's when I realized, okay, there's something to invest in here. This is something that I should pivot and focus on.
That's amazing. And I think about the technology. I mean, when you think about people who go on Facebook Live now, and it had just started several years ago, it wasn't even a possibility. And so being ahead of the curve, seeing the technology. I mean, social media changes every day almost, and being part of that curve and being able to evolve is just so amazing. And that you saw that trend early on. So, what was that like now evolving? And what is that formula that you have for people who are starting out that's saying, I'm just learning about Facebook Live now? How do you catch up? What are some of the beginning steps?
Oh, this is really good. And that's such a great question because most people, when they're first starting out, they'll go live on their profile in front of everyone, right? And they'll do their flubs and all that, which is cute at first because it's like your first time.
Yeah.
But if you're still practicing and it's your third or fourth or fifth time and you're still flubbing, you want to try to avoid that because at that point,
Mm,
especially if you're doing it on your professional company page, right? People will start to tune you out because they realize, oh man, this is how many tech glitches that you've had now, and they'll
got
just
it.
push you out and no longer pay attention. So my biggest advice is really create your own private Facebook group and test your settings there. That's where you could
Mhm.
say, okay, I'm testing the ATR 2100 mic. This is the setting. Or maybe I'm switching over to the Blue Yeti. How's this lighting? And when you have that down, then invite a friend of yours, a colleague of yours that could give you real constructive criticism. Hey, how does my audio sound? What do you think about the lighting that I had? And they'll be honest with you, right? Hopefully, they'll tell you whether the audio was good or if it was bad. And then you can make your adjustments there. And when you do that, when you practice and practice and practice without anyone else seeing except you and your secret partner at that point, the time when you finally go live, they're going to stop and like, oh, Angela, how did you do that? You did that all by yourself. And you're like, yes, I did. Thank you. Thank you.
I love that thought process behind it. So I have several clients who maybe, they're already thought leaders. They have a book, they have a program, or they have a whole practice, like a lot of doctors, people in the health space that I have. They said, but I really need to do a Facebook Live show because someone's been asking them or they have their following already. And something like that, it's important to kind of come out of the gate. You don't have to have it perfect, but like you're saying, do you reflect your brand? And I also have some clients that are just afraid to just kind of, they need to just get their voice out there. So maybe you could start practicing on your personal page. Like really just, sometimes I say just go for it. It's live. It's a little bit more forgiving in terms of getting your voice out there. Some people just need to start that momentum, right? Really start putting themselves out there. But there's another way to do it, which is if you're going to launch something for your brand that you want to showcase, you want it to reflect you and to put a little bit more thought into it. Like, let's do some of the stuff behind the scenes. So when you come out and you showcase it, you're like, wow, like the quality looks better, the sound looks better. Doesn't mean you shouldn't still go live on Facebook just to kind of explore your voice. But I love what you're saying is that's what I tell my clients. It's the same thing why I'm withholding kind of my keynote virtual studio. I'm kind of testing out the kinks because I'm going from level, let's say 3 up to that next level. And I really want to showcase it when I have things tested out first. So I always say that. Does what you're doing reflect your brand, right? Is your background, doesn't have to be perfect, but does it reflect what the quality that and the messaging that you want to put out there? So I love that kind of giving it a little practice and really putting a little thought into it, right? A little strategy behind what you want to put out into the world.
Oh, absolutely. I think the more that you practice, and if you're a guest on other people's show, then you know how to answer questions on the fly. You know how to deliver. You know what sound bites are really going to ring in someone's ear. And then they're like, oh, I remember that conversation. She said something
Mhm.
really witty that I needed to write down. So the more that you practice, the better it gets. And I'm sure you get this all the time too with your clients having to be on camera. It's like, I know you've got like this big event going on, but don't wing it. Like Angela, the only thing that I wing in my life is my eyeliner. Everything else I practice.
I love it. And you know what's so interesting? You know, my clients tell me, they're like, well, I want to be like so and so, or I want to be like this. Professional speakers, they do put a lot of time and energy behind everything that we're putting out. Like even you with your set right now, how you look, I got ready for you because I want to put my brand out there in a professional sense. It's like paying attention to what someone needs. Doesn't mean you have to be perfect all the time, but I made a conscious effort in my brand. My brand is professional. I teach people how to show up, and so do you. And so I never felt comfortable with doing the super casual, come look at me, follow all my junk, and that's okay because some people, that is their style. It's that really raw, casual kind of, let me show you behind the scenes of everything. Doesn't mean I'm staged. It just means that I put extra thought, and so do you, into what would serve my clients the best, what would provide the most value. And that's paying attention and being thoughtful to presentation and to professionalism. And so that it's for each person to decide what reflects their brand, right? And to put it out there and be prepared. But a lot of stuff goes in behind the scenes. It doesn't just show up. You don't just show up.
Exactly. And I love like even when you came on camera and I saw your mic and it matches your shirt, I was like, that's how you know someone pays attention to details, right? Because when you want to work with someone, if someone is highly detail oriented, you start to realize, okay, I see the quality, I see the attention to detail, I see the delivery. Would I want to hire that speaker for my event? Heck yeah.
See, I love that you're talking about that. And that's kind of, there's this debate going on right now in the speaking world because it's hard. People are used to the stage. Maybe that's where they shine. And to go on camera, it's a different skill set. I always tell my clients, you want to be clear, confident, and connected on camera and off. But if you're aligned, you can show up that way. But there are slightly different skill sets with speaking on a stage versus making a video versus going live versus being on a panel. And it doesn't mean you have to be perfect at all of them, but it's being able to distinguish where you shine, where your strong suits are, and also where to pivot. Right. And that's where I always tell people in my training, it doesn't mean you have to be master all of them at the same time, but knowing that there's a difference. Right. Everyone says, I want to be good on camera. And it's like, are you making a video? Are you going live? Are you being interviewed by a TV news show? Are you, what is the distinction? And just
Exactly.
knowing those questions to ask and noticing the details is one step in the journey.
Absolutely. It's one of those things. I just yesterday I was having a conversation with a client and we were talking about repurposing a video on Facebook and on YouTube. And we had the discussion of when you put a video on YouTube, you might want to put extra effort in the editing process, because the way that people consume videos on YouTube is very different. They like their jump cuts, they like get to the content really quickly. Whereas Facebook, it's more of like, okay, come on, come sit down. All right. Yeah. Go get your glass of water. Okay, cool. Come on. Let's
Yeah,
hang
let's
out. And
chat for a while,
yeah, let's
hang
chat
out,
for
the
a while
live
and then
stream.
get started. Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. So we were talking about the future. What trends are you seeing now, and what should people start thinking about in terms of virtual and live streaming? What are the possibilities?
Okay. So, well, the first one obviously is a lot of people are going to be weary of the fact of going to in person big conference events. And that's where a lot of event organizers are now making the shift to, how do I take this traditional in person event and move it online? So, I think if you came as a speaker and you said, all right, this is how I can engage your audience and keep them buzzing with excitement and sitting on the edge of their seat paying attention to this particular event organizers are going to want that, right? There are speakers who can get people, butts and seats for real live events, but how do you get people to show up online for that event? How do you get them to
Yes.
book way in advance and give feedback, right? We just had the Leap into Live Streaming Bootcamp, and there were speakers who would show up for their sessions, show up in the comments, answer questions, do a live Q. They went above and beyond, right? Whereas I've been a part of other virtual events, and some speakers would do what we call the post and ghost. Here's my recorded video. Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Bye. I'll see you later. And it's such a missed opportunity, because that's your time to connect with people.
Yes.
And during a time like right now, I think a lot of people are looking for connection. And if you were to stick around, build those relationships, because there's always resources in relationships, well,
Mhm.
now you're growing your audience, and they know that they can lean on you whenever they need help. So
I
that's
love
one.
that extra attention. And that should be kind of a given, right? In terms of the people who go above and beyond to really connect. And I think in this day and age, I've always been an advocate, especially when we're in person, about, are you showing up the way you show up online in person? Can people really connect with you? Well, now we can't do that, but that doesn't mean you can't show up and provide value and really have people feel that connection, and that you actually have integrity and you're honoring your word. You're not just going, oh, here's another thing that I'm doing.
Oh,
So
yeah.
this time it's super important. I love that you talk about that. Let's go back a little bit. You're talking about the Leap into Live Streaming Boot Camp. And for those of you, we will put it in the show notes, but it's at ECAM live /bootcamp, right? ecam.live /bootcamp. And it's part of a bootcamp that you are leading, and it's all free. I had a chance to glance at it. I haven't looked at all the sessions, but if you guys are interested, you should check that out. It's kind of the future of live streaming and just kind of the basics to get started, right?
Oh, absolutely. It was a 3-day virtual event, which you still get access to. There's more than 40 sessions that you have access to until June 1st. But the way that we scheduled it was, day one is like, you're just getting your feet wet. You're just trying to like figure it out. Who's my audience? What's my content? Day two, we get into gear, right? So we get into the gear, how to do your studio setups, the lighting, the mics, how to level up. And then honestly, day three is, now that you have your show, awesome. How do you get those brand sponsors? How do you land those speaking gigs? So it's more about, now that you've built your platform, how do you become you everywhere? How does everyone, it's like, they can't miss you because you're top of mind and you're tip of tongue. You're on my show and I'm on your show. And like, you keep repurposing
Yes.
that content, and you're everywhere.
I love that. I did catch part of that, and I was like, this is perfect. Even for me who's starting at the mid-level, and for the beginners, it's kind of just a way to explore, because I really think it's so important right now. And you were talking about all the live events. Just today I got a call that a lot of my live events that I was speaking at, some were postponed till July or August. And then I think what's going to happen, I don't know for sure, but as Microsoft, pushed all live events until 2021, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some people might follow that lead. So we do need to start thinking about, what if they don't come back for a while? How do we pivot and how do we up level? Some people may still have those live events. So I'm being prepared for both. I'm going to show up, in October or June, July, whenever, ready with what I think I'm going to present live. But in the behind the scenes right now, I'm scrambling to get all the gear and all the lights and make sure you have enough lead time. I'm doing all the testing so that when they say, okay, you know what, we're going to do it virtual, are you ready to go? And I'll be like,
Yeah.
here's what what I have. So for those of you listening who this may seem a little overwhelming because you're like, what? I'm supposed to do this whole show by myself. You can just start thinking about ways to up level because you want to connect virtually. How can I really connect virtually? Maybe just with an extra webcam, but like you said, putting an extra focus on that attention. But for those of us who are ready for that next step, like all the speaker community that I've been talking about, this is the time to really showcase what your value is.
Oh,
What
yeah.
are the tips that you have for those people to really stand out?
As far as making yourself stand out as a speaker, I love the behind the scenes. Show us how you're creating your content. It's not just about the slides anymore, right? If people are tuning in from their homes or from their office, how do you keep that attention for that entire 30 to 45 minutes? It's not just going to be slide, slide, slide. Is it you
Yes.
picture in picture? Are you doing lower third graphics? Are you doing any video overlays like in between as you're telling your story? Right? And I
Yes.
think it's also very helpful to know, there are some speakers who like to move around and walk around the stage. Well, you could still kind of do that with live video. You just have to get the
Yes.
right camera setup where it'll follow you, like face tracking. That's something that you could Google, face tracking cameras, right? That's always
Yes.
nice. Or even Angela and I, we were just talking about how we have these in-ear monitor headphones.
Yes, like
And
my
with
news days. You guys can't see them, but they're called IFBs, or you can just get headphones. That my brand that I see are the Me. Are they the Me
yeah,
Studio headphone? Yes. So I can put a link in the show notes too, but they're these earphones that you can put behind your head and in your ear so you can't see a lot of times. See, this is what I want to guys give a lesson on up leveling. Stephanie looks so good and professional. As a TV person, I remember doing that, and I've always done that. I've always had earphones in, but I put them in my ear.
yeah.
You can't see them. Most people just use the earbuds that hang, and that's fine too if that's your style. But my style has never been cluttered or, coming from a TV background, you would expect more from me. So, yeah, those Me headphones are amazing, right? Because they're like,
Everything.
if you don't have an IFB, which is called a feedback, internal feedback, or you used to hear my producer talk to me, but now everyone's self producing. So, but those are some cool headphones. I wanted to talk about, I love what you said about injecting your personality and differences. So maybe you don't come from a TV background, but maybe you come from a different background. I was looking at different setups from different speakers across the country. And like Brian Fanzo, someone who's in the leap into live streaming. He is amazing with technology, but he's very like, baseball cap and like testing the technology. And he had his GoPro and he was like doing some cool stuff with the sticks and all these different devices. But he was all about technology and testing devices. So you're more elegant and straightforward. Your camera looks beautiful. You got the flowers in the background. And so it doesn't have to be one way, right? And another person, they were really good at pre-production. So they put a lot of editing things into their presentation. So whatever your strong suit is you can inject that into the new virtual setting, whereas now we can't be live and in person, but there's so many ways to play, right?
Exactly. I think one thing to remember too is that usually when you're on stage, you would have the MC and that would be your hype person. You
Mm.
don't really have that anymore on a virtual stage. You have to be your own hype person, right? Like you have to capture someone's attention. That way they're willing to stop the scroll and pay attention to what you're saying. So how do you build that up in your story or what you're teaching them? And how do you do that and convey it in a way that they're like, wow, I really, really need to just pay attention.
Yeah. What are you seeing in terms of your clients, maybe in corporations or different events? What are the trends that they're seeing or they need right now?
For corporate clients right now, they're all struggling to find out which meeting platforms would work best for the in-person events that they had, right?
Mhm.
And there's so many to choose from. There's your Zoom meetings, or you could leverage the live streaming platforms and put them in a private community, whether it's like a Facebook group or you embedded it into like a secret landing page. But that's what they're all thinking about at this point. But I can't tell you how many times, Angela, I get, the VP knocking like, hey, like, where can I get this gear? And now I feel like it's like a black market. I'm like, well, I have my very first mic, my ATR 2100 that I could sell you, right? Because, when you're level 3, and evolving with your life stream, you have the old gear. And I'm actually kind of happy that I still have it because I could lend it out to clients and be like, here's the Logitech Brio. You could use that.
Yeah, and so I love that you're saying that you're evolving and that she has a high level camera, the Brio. We're getting into tech gear now, but it's just really about I see a lot of companies, they can play at level 1, level 2, level 3, depending on where they wanna go. My husband works in corporate, and they were doing this large, corporate panel, and, the tech person is me, I'm like, "Okay, you have to use my Logitech Brio. You need to look better. The background
Oh,
needs to be
you
like, you are you"
always
I
have to
gave
look
him my
better.
ring light. He's like, "What?" I was like, "Okay, no, you can't go, on this thing," and most people aren't. Some people are still sitting in the dark,
Yeah.
and it doesn't take a lot. You don't have to buy all this equipment, but there's little things, that I've been putting out, and you can go back to one of the earlier podcasts about how just sitting in the right light makes a huge difference. So if you're
Oh, yeah.
just this is not your thing, you're not going to be live streaming all the time, but there's different ways to up level in terms of just sitting in the right light, being centered, knowing what your focus is. But then if you really want to up level, then you need to talk to someone like Stephanie, because they're handling these large events where there's so much opportunity to really still engage. Just because we're virtual doesn't mean you can't keep the people engaged. And now you have extra creativity to do some amazing things. What are some of the things that you're excited about in terms of this next phase of live streaming and opportunity?
So I love this question because you brought it up earlier, but I don't know if you remember, but Mark Zuckerberg had made this big, huge announcement about messenger rooms. The
Yes.
fact that Facebook Messenger is evolving so
Mhm.
that if you want to have your own online event, well, you could create a Facebook event. You could charge a fee for people to be a part of that. And it's all done through Facebook. Well, for those of us that use ECAM, we know that you could use a virtual cam. Everything that you set up in your live stream show
Yes.
can be funneled into messenger rooms. Well, that's my hypothesis, right? My
Yes.
hypothesis is that when you create these messenger rooms, well, it's like creating your own show, but now you have like you're selling tickets for it. And it's so much easier for someone like a CMO who doesn't want to do like lead pages and click funnels and all these different things to hook things up like they're Legos. It's all there. It's all there on Facebook. You could create a Facebook event, hooks into your messenger room. You show up, you're top of mind, you're tip of tongue, and people are just, wow, look at that.
I know I saw that one that you did a whole post on that, right? So you can check out, we'll put the information in the show notes too. What's your website again?
Lightscameralive.com.
Yeah, lightscameralive.com. She has tons of blog posts on shortcuts with how when you're live streaming and Facebook Live, a lot of information there if you guys want to go deeper, because it is fun for me to step back and to watch the evolution from traditional broadcasting to videos to Facebook Lives and even Facebook evolve, knowing that that's the next thing, is that creating these messenger rooms. They saw Zoom taken over. I'm sure it's been in the works for a while, but they're like, they can't be the only platform. So it's not the only platform. If you like Facebook, you stay on Facebook Live, messenger rooms, but you can see how all the companies are evolving. And this is what is so exciting, is that this is, an interesting time, but this is where innovation happens.
Oh,
And
yeah.
what's the need right now? Virtual,
It's,
to connect, to
yeah.
still go about business as usual. So it's fun to watch that evolution, but I know you're on the pulse and seeing all the trends.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's so many of us are excited. I keep refreshing the app on my phone, Angela, just to see, like, is it there yet? Is it there yet? Because, he made the announcement a couple weeks ago, but at this
Yeah.
point, there's people have squirrel syndrome. They're probably looking somewhere else now, but I'm like, no, no, no. I still want to figure this out, figure out a strategy, roll it out to my clients and say, let's get your first event up and running. Let's figure out how you want to do your presentations and really go from there.
And there's other ways besides, even though the messenger rooms are great, like people who want to stay, they're more into security or their private platforms. What are some of the other things that they can do if they don't want to be on Facebook?
Oh, yeah. Other platforms that are out there. One of my favorites is Demio, Demio. It is a powerful webinar platform. So you could go live on the webinar. You could use it as evergreen. Evergreen means if you wanted to have like a product, you could have it just continually run and people will join in. But what I like about it, what's different from things like Zoom is, Angela, if you wanted to have a call to action that says, download your free gift now, they're going to give you analytics to say, this is how many people clicked on that button right now. This is how many people clicked on that button to buy your product or your service. Or this is how many people clicked on
Interesting.
that button to book you as a speaker. That to me, there's beauty in data. And when you
Mm.
know how your messaging is convincing people to shift their behavior, to take action, man, like, for me as a speaker, that's what I want to learn.
That's amazing. What about some other things that for people who are privacy issues, do you just stay on Zoom or because with ECAM you can stream into those live platforms, right? Depending on whatever company, whatever they're using that they're comfortable with. What do you see?
Well, right now for Zoom, because they have the security issues, they've kind of like closed the door on virtual cameras. So right now you can't use Ecamm virtual cam in there, which is like, oh, everyone was so sad in the Facebook groups. They're like, what's going on? But as far as like other things that you can do, right? If you were to use Zoom or any other platform, again, just think about how you want to present yourself. You kind of mentioned earlier before about your husband wanting to do like this meeting, this conference, and you gave him the light and all of that good stuff. And it really is powerful if you step up your audio and your visual,
Yes.
especially if you're on a panel, right? Imagine if you're on a panel with two other speakers in the same industry and you're kind of competing for them on it with as far as attention goes. Well, if you show up professional and polished, let me tell you, every single word that you say, people are going to hang on to because they've already, there's that 6 second first impression of like, ooh,
Yes.
I want to listen to that person. Okay. Everyone else, poof, out of mind. It's all eyes on you.
You know, it's so interesting. I'm such, coming from the background that I do, I've been watching all those charity concerts and different things, just watching the techniques of how they are piecing things together. So they're having live award show like the Nickelodeon Kids Choice Awards. They were doing the Safe at Home together, and just to watch each person, the magic of what they can do. But I like what you said about I don't think people realize that just small tweaks. I've been watching, my husband's corporate panels. I was like, all right, that person needs a new light. They should have been sitting here. Their camera's a little crooked, but those are little things that you can do. And I have content based on that too. Just the four top things that you can do to look more professional. But then there's the higher level stuff we're talking about where I was analyzing these large, the late night shows, they're all at home too. So there's that thing of just seeing what works for you, but there's so many choices, right? But also there's something to be said about being intimate as well, as long as it reflects who you are. So you don't have to do a lot, but that makes a huge difference. I always say about being professional is a big difference. Um, you were one of the, not the only one, but one of the early ones to go into live. How else have you felt like the power of the only? Like, what does the power of the only mean to you?
Yeah, the power of the only, as far as what it means to me, is owning your own experience. And coming from the ad agency background, I would sit at the table when we're working on a pitch, and I was the only person of color, right?
Mhm.
And there were times where I would look at the copywriters, the messaging that they would have, like, that kind of means something different, and I think that gives you more insight into corporate speak versus like how real people talk to one another. And even sometimes with live streaming, people want to give me like the bookworm terminology. I'm like, no one calls it that. They call it this. And by saying what it is on how people actually communicate, it becomes more searchable, it becomes more relatable. And I think being the only in that sense of coming to the table and be like, I've had other conversations, this is how it could either be misinterpreted or this is how you can make it more memorable.
See, I love that. And having that's one of the principles of the power of the only is owning your power and your voice and being able to speak up, right? And it could be speak up because you're a woman of color or speak up because you're the expert in the live streaming space. It doesn't have to be one way or the other. It's just like, well, here's a different way to look at it. Or here's the value that I add, that a perspective that you may not see that can add to the diversity of the event or just the conversation or the actual outcome. So I love that you were talking about why it's important for us to all take a stand when we are in that position of power. Same thing when I was in newsrooms, right? They may cover stories from a different perspective, whereas me as an Asian woman, I'm like, well, maybe there's another angle we could look at.
Oh yeah.
And so different ways to talk about diversity. What is your background? Tell me about where you grew up, and did you ever feel like the only when you were growing up?
Oh, all the time. So when I grew up, so I'm Filipino, but when I grew up, I was raised in Japan. And so
Oh,
everyone in
wow.
Japan was Japanese. But my family and I were there because we lived on the military base. And so it wasn't very uncommon for us to go out of base and be the only Filipino family going out, for dinner and all of that stuff. But even when I moved to San Diego, like 5th grade, being the only one that had lived internationally.
Wow.
Right. And it was funny. Sorry. Okay.
I love that.
Tell her what this is. It's a frozen orange slice.
It's okay. We're all working from home. Her lovely 5-year-old daughter just walked in. Say hi.
Say hi, baby. Oh, she's enjoying her orange slice. I've been wanting to give her fresh snacks lately, like healthy snacks. And so I
Yeah.
figured, let's take this orange slice and put it in the freezer. Now it's like a popsicle for her.
Perfect. But
Yeah.
that's right now, all of us are working from home and some of us have children. So we totally understand, Stephanie. But I love hearing about that experience. Tell me more about that experience when you came back to San Diego. What was that like?
Oh, it was so weird because in Japan, like anything that was from the US, whether it was movies or music, we were always like 5 years behind. And so I came to San Diego and my gosh, like everyone was into Snoop Dogg and like Cypress, like hardcore rap, right? And I came to San Diego with my side ponytail and like my, what do you call, like my genie pants and polka dots. And I was still listening to, New Kids on the Block. And they're like, who is this crazy girl all about her kawaii? And it was weird. Yeah, I was the only kid that knew what actually happened in Dragon Ball Z ahead of everyone. Because Dragon Ball Z came from Japan. But everything else, it was so weird just having that different background and being thrust into the US.
Yeah. Did you have more of do you feel like you grew up more in the Japanese culture?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. You felt you were more Japanese. Like that's what you
Oh,
relate
yeah.
to?
Yeah, I feel like just mannerisms, traditions, all of that stuff really resonates with me. And even now, last year we had gone to Japan and just the culture of just everyone being so nice. We were in Japan and back then I was in a wheelchair because I had broken my ankle.
Oh, no.
But what was nice is that all of like the Japanese workers and employees, they would always show me where the elevator was. They would help us because it was my husband and I and our 5-year-old. Well, and then I came back to the US and I'm going to an event because I'm going to speak there. And as soon as I get off the elevator, I'm still in my wheelchair. This guy like cuts me off before I even get off the elevator.
Oh, no.
And I was like, this is very different, like way different from Japan. But yeah.
So interesting. How do you think the culture in which we grow up in when we're young, how does that shape us?
Oh, I think it shapes us up a lot, which is why like I always pay attention to her. In psychology, you learn that that ages 0 to 7 is that time when a child is growing up and they're looking for role models. They're going to follow your lead. You think that they're not looking, but they're looking, right? And they're
Yes.
listening to how you phrase things, the beliefs that you have, the limiting beliefs that you might even have, right? Things that you might be saying unconsciously that you didn't realize they're still picking up on it. And so I look at her and I'm very much like, okay, what behaviors do I have to instill in you? Like, yes, you could have something sweet, but could it be a nice, juicy orange that's frozen?
And I love that perspective because your work goes a lot deeper than just social media and live streaming strategy. It's really about, you also do some NLP, neuro linguistic programming, because a lot of, I find, is about breaking through those barriers. Tell me about how that's influenced your work.
Oh, yeah. So coming from the ad agency world, we were on the pitch team, right?
Yeah.
You probably know this. This is the A team. This is like when you're about to pitch a new client, you bring up the people that are well-versed, that can show up professionally, communicate, and deliver. And for our team, it was so important for us to know how to communicate with impact and with influence. And with NLP, that's where I learned it the best, right? Like, how do you structure a presentation that hooks viewers in, that hooks the CMO in, and then you're all good to go.
Yeah. So it's so important that we talk about breaking through the barriers. So like there's the tech side of, getting your brand and everything out there, but then it's also, are you aligned with you and your message? Right.
Yes.
And that's kind of what I help people with, but you also help people with, it's an integration. So it's not just about the strategy. The power of the only, what are the 3 tips that you have for people to really harness the power of their only?
I would say first, embrace your story, embrace what your experiences are, because some people aren't able to look at it through that same lens. And so if you could walk them and have them just kind of be in your own shoes and see it through your own perspective, there's power in that. If you're able to have someone have empathy and think about it through your own situations, and you do the same, then there's definitely power in that. As far as like being the only, you know, I still think back to this time where I got off the stage at Social Media Marketing World, and this girl, student, UC San Diego, had walked up to me, Angela, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, that was so amazing. I've I've never seen another speaker like you, and it's so cool for you to represent, you know, us Asian women on there." And it had never even occurred to me, never even occurred to me. But then I started to realize, like, wow, you know, people are paying attention to you, and they want to know, they want to know what you stand for.
Your daughter's paying attention to you.
Oh, yeah. Okay, honey. She's cute. She's one of those where she's not afraid of being on camera anymore. And you know,
She
back
sees
to your
mommy
question.
doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, she sees mommy doing it, and she realizes there's nothing to be afraid of with the camera. You know, like she sees the lights and she's like, oh, there's nothing to be scared of. What's there to be scared of? And I think when you instill confidence at a younger age, then you'll have a 5-year-old walk across your office and wants to steal the show.
And Joe, but I love that you said that, because that is a big part of my work is representation. It's like, you don't, yes, she wants to be represented. You don't know the impact that you have. And that is, I think, big for our audience, is the thought leaders out there that may be feeling reluctant, whether to go live or to speak on that stage or to make that video or even just to step up in their own company, is that representation matters and doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be perfect. You show up in the way that you want to show up, present yourself, and you don't realize the impact that it has, the ripple effect, you know, whether for little girls or for just someone that's like, wow, I haven't seen a speaker like you. So thank you for sharing that story. It's so important.
Yes, absolutely. And she wanted me to tell you, Angela, that she loves your blouse. She loves your mic. So.
Oh, is she writing?
Oh, she's right there. She's like, "Can you please tell her?" And I'm like, "If I don't tell you, she's not gonna leave."
Speak and share your voice. Yes.
Yeah.
And I really love that you shared that insight, because at this time, you know, right now we're talking about Asian Pacific Awareness Heritage Month. And but I think what's great about it is that you show up as a leading live streaming strategist, a social media marketer, and you're Asian, right? It's not that I'm just being Asian. Same with me. It's like, I'm not an Asian speaker. I'm a keynote speaker. And by me showing up as fully as who I am, my Asianness, my Chineseness is part of that experience. And I
Yeah.
think that that is what's beautiful, is that it's an important time to recognize all of you, all of us, you know, especially but during the May. I love being able to interview you and see that you are being the only in not just yourself, but also in this industry.
Oh yeah. It's one of those things where I don't really realize it sometimes. You know, you'll get like the conference speaker lineup, and then you can't help but notice you're like, "Oh, hey, hi." Like, "Hey, Asian, what's up?
Yeah.
Nice to see you."
But I think, you know, but I think that there's a difference, right? It's not like they're looking for an Asian speaker. They're
Yeah.
looking for who's good in this space. But when you show up and bring all of yourself, you represent and you make an impact. And I think that's what's important. That's really what the power of the only is about. I
Mm-hmm.
want everyone to harness their power of the only. And when they show up, it makes it possible for others to show up as well.
Yeah. You know, I will even say that back then when I came to the US, 5th grade, side ponytail, I was just like, man, I'm the only awkward girl. But let me tell you, those stories now, they hit it out of the park. When I'm on stage, I'm like, hey, side ponytail, genie pants, you know, rocking the MC Hammer, too legit to quit. Yeah, I know all those lyrics.
Yeah. And I think all of us feel like the only at some point. And that's really what I want to harness, is like, what can we learn from the onlys that have broken through, right? And stepped up. Let's leave with one final note. How do you want people to think, or what can you encourage them, inspire them to really step out there and own their power of the only, whether that's in live streaming or just kind of the future that you see in this time that we're in?
No, I think one of the most beautiful things that you could share as a live streamer is your story, because it's not often that you find stories that are cheerful or joyful or inspirational. A lot of times it's very sensationalized, and I think if you can really capture someone's attention with your story, then it helps you build that connection. It's one of the most beautiful things. I just can't imagine life without live video these days.
Yeah, and you connect so well. Why do you think is the secret to you being able to have that connection and that ease?
Yeah. I was going to say, one of the things that helps as far as connection goes is when you look at the camera, right?
Yeah.
You just pretend you're talking to your best friend, someone that you haven't seen forever, which I think even during these times you could totally relate to. Because if I
Yes.
was sitting like right in front of Angela, like, I'm going to be excited, right? I'm going to smile. It's not that I'm always trying to rehearse everything, like, okay, I have to move my hands here, I have to move my hands there. It's you're having a conversation. And I think that's
Yeah.
the most powerful thing that you can have when you show up on camera.
I love that. Yeah, that's the number one thing I tell people. It's like that dot is your best friend. Yeah.
I love
Thank you
it.
so much, Stephanie. It's such a joy to have you here with us today. And I'm super excited. Tell me one more thing about your book coming out soon, too, right?
Yes, so the book, The Ultimate Social Media Guide, is coming out August 2020. It's been a labor of love. People say like, "Oh, I wrote a book and it takes a while." but it
Yes.
but it's so much fun, and I'm the co-author of it. I have three other co-authors: Jen Herman, who is the forefront blogger on Instagram; Mike Alton, who knows everything about blogging; and Amanda Robinson, who knows everything about, messenger bots, brilliant. And Eric Buteau, he knows, social media like the back of his hand. So it's fun to have a couple of chapters in there about the power of live video.
Oh, I love that. So it's a compilation book. Well, we'll look forward. We'll put it in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here and sharing all your insight. And I can't wait to catch up with you again.
Thank you so much. It was great.
Thanks, Stephanie.